This is the Greg Bedard Patriots Podcast with Nick Cattles.
Welcome into this Tuesday edition of the Greg Bedard Patriots Podcast. Brendan Glasheen subbing in for Nick Cattles. Greg Bedard here as well. Of course, Greg, we've had a chance now to let the game from Saturday night process and marinate. What are our leadoff thoughts? Patriots get blown out. They lose 4 or 5 to end their season.
Yeah, my leadoff thoughts have to start with the defense, Brennan. I mean, it was watching the film. It was the most pathetic, passive defensive performance I've ever seen out of the Patriots defense. I mean, it was atrocious. They didn't even try to put up a fight, Brennan. This was not a case of them just being overwhelmed by Josh Allen and the Bills and all their, now they were at full strength as opposed to the last time they had, Beasley back and they had Gabriel Davis back and, the running game has been working for them. This was not a case of the Bills just overwhelming the Patriots and playing like a perfect game. It wasn't that. It wasn't that at all. And anybody who thinks that, anybody who is resting on the thought that Josh Allen has just become too good this year. He's too hot right now. I don't fault the Patriots. I don't fault Bill Belichick for this loss. I'm just gonna say it was just the Bills being great and we were just bad. It was just a bad game. Don't do that. Do not do that. If you do that, you are ignoring the last month of the season. If the Patriots were playing great defense, Brendan, for the last month and this happened, then yes, you could absolutely say this. But I don't know how you can do that with a good conscience if you watched the Indianapolis Colts, who were scared of their quarterback, the Miami Dolphins, who were scared of their quarterback, also during this little streak here. Those teams didn't even trust their quarterbacks, and they still put up a bunch of yards and a bunch of points against the Patriots. And so this just follows along with that. Are the Bills more talented than those teams? Hell yeah. That's why it was much worse. And, you can make the case that if Emmanuel Sanders doesn't drop a pass, if Josh Allen doesn't miss Kumaro wide open in the end zone in the last time, that this would have happened the last time. This is 2 straight games. It's not a one-off. So my biggest takeaway from this is do not excuse this. Okay? It was not just Josh Allen. He was very good in this game. He was. But the Patriots did not put up a fight. They barely put pressure. I think I had them for 3 blitzes in this game. They played soft in the back end. Basically, what the film shows is that Bill Belichick went into this game and said, once Jalen Mills went into COVID, that was the straw that broke the camel's back. They had already traded Stephon Gilmore. Jonathan Jones got injured for the year. We already knew they were limited in terms of what they could do in the secondary. That's why they played zone most of the year and got away with it against the crappier teams. But once Jalen Mills went on COVID and wasn't available for this game, basically the Patriots, look, this is the way they went out there, Brendan. This is on film. They went out there and said, we can't stop this team. We can't match up with the Bills. So what we're going to do is we're just going to play back. Hopefully they check it down, maybe take, 10, 12, 15 plays. And at some point in the cold weather, there's a tip. We get loose. We strip sack. Josh Allen throws us one. That's basically our defensive plan, is to hope for the best. And that's what they went out there and did. The Bills are not that team anymore. And the Patriots looked old, slow, ineffective. Just to give people an idea, when they were going well, and I grade the film, I do plus minus. Was this a good play, better than average, or lower than average? Most of the time when the Patriots defense was going well, I'd probably have 20 plus plays and maybe, 10 minus plays or something like that. In this game, I had the Patriots for 11 plus plays and 49 minus plays. It's bad football. And to me, that's where you have to start with this game.
So, with all that being said, we wonder that the question now becomes, how did it get to this point? I know that leads to into more bigger picture thoughts, but just specifically on this game, doesn't it go back to what we talked about last week? You start wondering about buy-in, and if indeed what you said, that approach to what the film told you, well, that to me then means, Greg, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but that to me means then, well, schematically, the players went out there and they didn't execute as to how they wanted to. And it feels like there was a disconnect there between what
Yeah,
they intended wanted to happen and what the players are like, this isn't going to work. And it just, the buy-in
yeah.
didn't
But
get
I
it.
think I think the approach put the players in a no-win situation, and I think
Yeah.
some of their effort reflected that. I think that the Patriots got to this week, and basically they got the plan from the great Bill Belichick. And trust me, I don't think any less of Bill Belichick, the coach, because of what happened. Okay, because you need to start with this. The Patriots in this second phase of the dynasty and the rise of the defense, or the reclamation of this defense, had to do with their ability to play man coverage. When you can do that, that started with Aqib Talib and went on to Darrelle Revis and Brandon Browner and then Stephon Gilmore. When you can do that, or when you have basically all the weapons in your arsenal, if you could play good man-to-man defense, it's going to be a tough time for all the best quarterbacks in the league, and it frees you up to spin the dial more. You can do different things. The Stephon Gilmore trade, which you could say whatever you want about it, okay? Because who knows? Bill could have been right. As far as I know, the reasoning for the trade was Stephon Gilmore, we don't think he's ever going to be healthy this year, and so we don't think that 75% Stephon Gilmore is worth what the balance of his contract is. So we'd be better off going cheaper and getting rid of him and getting the cat, whatever. So that was the rationale. I don't necessarily disagree with that because I'm not on the inside. I don't have the medical reports. But there's little question that trading Stephon Gilmore left the secondary thin. Basically, you were hoping J.C. Jackson and Jonathan Jones at least would stay healthy, because those are two elite man corners at what they do. J.C. Jackson at number 2, Jonathan Jones at slot. Jonathan Jones gets hurt. Now all of a sudden, the Patriots had to play a lot more zone defense. So that's where you start. And we talked about it on this podcast during the season, because I was asking around the bye week. I asked a personnel executive from another team that studied the Patriots intently, and he was very high on the Patriots. And I asked the question. I said, can they still play zone defense the further they go? And he said yes, if they continue to get the pressure that they're getting, which was basically Matthew Judon and Christian Barmore. That evaporated against the better teams. Therefore, they could not play zone. You can't cover for that long. I mean, Josh Allen with 9 seconds to throw the touchdown pass to Dawson Knox. No one can cover that long, even in that short of an era in the red zone. So that's where you have to start in terms of the downfall of this defense. And it's in the numbers. I mean, I asked my friend Aaron Schatz at footballoutsiders.com. I asked him, because what you get a lot from people in explaining this game, especially people want to make excuses for Bill Belichick and the Patriots, who don't want to be fair and balanced. They will say, have you ever seen this done to a Bill Belichick defense? The Patriots were a top 5 defense this year, and they just did that. When were the Patriots a top 5 defense? Like in the first 8 games of the season? Like, what are you even talking about? Basically, if you make that comment, it's one of those, tell me you know nothing about football without telling me you know nothing about football. Because, and I asked Aaron, I said, what were the numbers for the final 5 weeks of the season, including this game? And in the final 5 weeks of the season, in terms of their metric, DVOA, that looks at the average play across the league. All right, they compare every play to down and distance, opponent, location, everything. They compare it to the league average. In weeks 15 through 18, the Patriots ranked 32nd overall in defense, 31st in pass defense, 32nd in rush defense. Now, Aaron, who is a Patriots fan, and he also likes his numbers, so that's a whole nother tangent. But anyways, he said, well, take out the last week. even though I don't know why you would take out the last week. The Patriots played a familiar opponent who they've already played, who's already part of that. But anyways, let's take Aaron for at his word. Let's take out the final week. In weeks 15 through 18, not including the playoff game, they were 15th overall in defense, 14th overall against the pass, and 24th against the rush. So what are we talking about here? We're not so stop talking about Bill Belichick and a Patriots defense, because this was not a Patriots defense. And so getting back to what you're talking about the game plan and the errors on the defense. To me, I think I would relate them this way. I think that they got the plan this week. The players got the plan, or at least when it was clear Jalen Mills was not going to play. And they saw the plan, which was basically, we're just going to sit back and just hope for the best against the Bills. And I think that the players lost some steam in that. And I think something that we'll touch on later, I think this was a theme in the final 5 games. Everyone's like, what happened to the defense after the bye week? I've gotten a little bit of intel on that. We will talk about that a little bit later in the show. But I think this is intertwined, where it was like these guys didn't like the plan and it didn't put them in the best position, which everyone says that Bill Belichick normally does, which he does. Mm-hmm. And these guys just failed. They were not enthused about the game plan and about what they were asked to do, and their play on the field reflected that.
So it's, to your point about that, and I'm sure we'll get into this, it speaks to the Matthew Slater comment about how we need to stick together. And now that kind of adds value when you consider what it looked like and what you think the film told. And then looking at those DVOA percentages, it makes it, what should really scare you as a Patriots fan is that's how dominating Buffalo could be in this division going forward, if that's how drastic of a change that one game made going forward. On the Matthew Judon, I know we've spent some time on him on this show, but just speaking to what this game was, he played on just 22 of the 56 defensive snaps. That's 39%. What's up with that? Just for this game, what's up with that?
Not only that, but let's just look at the facts. He did not start the game. The only game that he did not start this year was Jacksonville after COVID. He barely played in that game. That's the only game he didn't start. Not only that, but he did not start the second half. So what happened was Juwan Bentley got hurt. They went in at halftime. They said, all right, what are we going to do? And they came out, and what they did was Bentley got hurt. So they opened up with Van Noy and Hightower on the edge, 3 guys inside, which I thought they would do. You needed to basically go with a 5-man rush against Josh Allen, which they didn't do. They lined up in, they didn't do. So that's the way they decided they were going to attack this game. But to start the second half, Juwan Bentley was the one linebacker. It was basically a 5-1. Juwan Bentley got hurt. So they moved Hightower to Bentley's spot. And then did they insert Judon at right edge? No. They put Jamie Collins in there. So even with an injury and what was going on in the game, the Patriots still decided that we're going to keep Matthew Judon in a little package. Now, look, I don't know 100% what has been going on with Matthew Judon. From what I understand, and I'm sure a lot of people want to say it's injury, he must be dealing with something, blah, blah, blah. That's maybe why he was limited in terms of his playing time. That could be true. I don't know that to be 100% not true. He was not on the injury report. I don't think it was injury related from the people I have talked about or talked to about sort of the conclusion of the season. It could be personal. I think there was a thing at some point from what I understand, but what I know is that according to people in the building, after the bye week, Matthew Judon did not have the same energy, did not have the same buy-in. And as we talked about last week, Brendan, the way he played in the final 5 games was reminiscent to me of the way I looked at Malcolm Butler in 2017 towards the end of that season. And I wrote at the end of that season, Malcolm Butler deserves to be benched. I wrote that in about mid-December. He was benched eventually in the Super Bowl. Right. And I also wrote, it would not surprise me if Matthew Judon was benched to start this game or at some point. And that's what happened. It's on film. And if you're a Patriots fan, you are praying and hoping that he's hurt, and that's the issue. Maybe it is. I'm not entirely ruling it out.
But I can hear in your voice. I can hear in your voice why you might be doubtful of that, because then the response to that would be, why even put him out there? To your point, right? About in terms of location.
Yeah. I mean, why not play Josh Uche? Why not have if Matthew Judon is nicked up to the point where you're not sure what you're going to get out of him, why not have Chase Winovich active? So that just tells you there's further evidence of it wasn't injury related. It's something else. And now you're like, oh boy, what happens? Because they've given him a lot of money. You know, the people start to bring up, is this a Adalius Thomas too, where Adalius Thomas got off to a hot start with the Patriots, and then all of a sudden, you know, he was gone. And I can't tell you, I mean, I've enjoyed covering Matthew Judon. I've heard almost entirely good things about him, but in this game, I had him for 1 run stuff and 4 minus plays. That just goes along with his final 4 games this year, where it's just, he's gone straight downhill, almost a complete 180 from where he was before the bye week.
Yeah, it makes you wonder if it's injury, or they're almost using a player now that makes an average annual salary of over $13 million in spot situations, and in those spots it didn't feel right. Another thought here on the game, just thoughts on Bill Belichick on 4th down. You had some questions about how conservative he was.
Yeah, again, I hated it. I thought even very early on in the game, sorry while I ruffle feathers here, but you know, when they came out and they ran 3 straight plays, and first of all, listen, I mean, I'm sure we'll touch on it before, but it's not like the offensive execution wasn't good either. The very first play of the game, Jonnu Smith blocks the wrong guy, and instead of a run going for about 30 yards, it goes for 2 yards, and that kind of stuff went on throughout the game. But in the second quarter, so that drive that went end of the first into the second, they go 3 straight rushes. You know, on 3rd down, Damian Harris has to find out a way to pick up that 1st down. I mean, he just ran out of bounds. The ball's in his left arm. He's got to dive for that. He's got to convert. He doesn't. He comes up short, and Belichick punts. It was 14-0 at that point. It's going to be 4th and inches. He doesn't ask for a measurement, nothing. He just punts. I'm sorry, but every game is unique, and it's win or go home. You've now watched the Bills. You haven't made the Bills punt in a game in 2 possessions. That they've scored now touchdowns on 4 consecutive, dating back to the last game. I think 4 consecutive touchdown drives against you. Like, Bill had to at that point say, all right, we got to go for this, because if we punt it back, they're just going to score again. I have no faith in my defense. You know, the plan isn't very good. I thought he should have gone for it there, just to give his team a chance. And then later on, the next drive, 4th and 8, they had 3rd and 20. They go to Bolden for 12 yards when he juggles the ball about 18 times, catches it. It's 4th and 8 at the New England 49. It's now 20-0 with 3:53 left in the first half. You got to go for it. I'm sorry. You know, hope for a penalty, maybe, you know, something, but you can't punt there. And what happens? The Bills get the ball back and they go down. It's 27-0 at halftime. Like, you know, it's just been a theme this year that Belichick has not demonstrated confidence in this team, any parts of it, especially the offense. You know, I thought he should have taken the ball to start this game.
Yes.
That was their best chance to win this game. That, you know, you're talking about hairpin turns against the Bills. Like, you guys haven't stopped the nosebleed in like 2 months. Like, the offense needs help. They need extra possessions. Like, get them an extra possession. Your best chance probably was to take the ball, go down, hopefully score, sort of stun the Bills, and maybe go from there. So I just thought all of it way too conservative for this team, the way they played in the last 5 weeks of the season.
So positives from Buffalo. I think there are a lot of ways to
we should do the 3 up, 3 down. Just to do
true.
that real
Let's
quick.
do that.
Yeah.
And I'm sure maybe
that can roll into that.
Okay. So you want to do the downs first or the ups? Because I don't know which one.
Yeah. Let's go with the downs first and sort of let's bottom out and then sort of pick this thing back up.
Okay. First
downs. Let's see. JC Jackson. If this was his final game as a Patriot, he did not go off on a high note. If there was any guys, and I've heard people around the team basically question some of the effort in this game, I think J.C. Jackson would be public enemy number one in that regard. I thought there were times, even like the very first play of the game, he didn't look like he wanted to engage. He made one nice pass tackle in the game. I did have him for one up. I had him for 7 minus plays, including, I think, 2 missed tackles. I thought that, if I'm the Patriots and I'm looking at this, there's no way I'm giving J.C. Jackson an extension. I'm tagging him. I'm trading, even if I have to take pennies on the dollar. Look, they have to figure out the cornerback thing, and we'll be talking about the Patriots in the future, going forward for a long time. So we don't need to do that now. But I thought J.C. Jackson was terrible in this game, and I would question his future here very much.
Before we go to the next down, I'm sensing a trend that you mentioned something in there about in the room. It feels like he wasn't completely dialed in. We're hearing that a lot now about individual players here, and that has got to be a concern. I mean, of course, if he's in their future plans from a contract standpoint, which he might not be, but from a defensive standpoint, as we've discussed, leadership, older guys leaving, we'll get to that. How about your second down?
Dante Hightower. I didn't see it as a lack of effort for him. It's just, obviously his knee's bad. This is something that goes back a while, like when he was a free agent and he went to the Jets, and the Jets were going to make an offer, and they didn't like his medicals with his knee. I think that's come full boat now, where, when he missed the previous week, they left him home from Miami, hoping maybe that the knee would get better, maybe took a shot or whatnot. He can't. He couldn't play at the end of the season. He was a liability on defense. I don't know what that means for his future. If I'm him, I probably call it quits before he needs, like knee replacement. He still might need that. You never know with some of these guys. A lot of them do, but it was not good from Dante Hightower, and I feel for him because I do think this was injury related.
Would he, real quick, and I know again this is more of a future thing, but just quickly, could you foresee him coaching? Could he be the next Mayo? Could he be a coach? Does he have interest in that?
I don't. Being around Dante for most of his career, actually all of his career, I don't really see that in the cards for him. I mean, look, he took the opt out last year with COVID, because of his family. I think Dante Hightower is one of those guys who's going to be gone, and you're never going to hear from him again. He's going to be down, and I don't know if he's from Alabama or what, where he played in college, but I see him going there and never returning.
Yeah, he's got a newborn too, so maybe focused on fatherhood and completely separate from football. Okay, your final down.
Man, there's so many different directions to go in this. Like, I'm just going to mention some guys who were just awful in this game. Jakob Johnson was bad. Trent Brown was bad. Let's see. Kyle Van Noy was not good. Judon was not good. Jamie Collins was not good. Juwan Williams was terrible. Almost the whole secondary was awful. But my third pick, I'm going to go with Jonnu Smith. I just thought he was terrible in this game. He, bad run blocks. He tips a pass that was intended for Jacoby Myers. Like, there was never a connect between him and the scheme this season, and they need to look very seriously at whether he can be a reclamation project or not. I think there's a lot of questions about that.
All right, we transition to the ups, and this will lead to our, bigger picture thoughts, I'm sure, because we're going to say some nice things we think about some of the younger players on offense and maybe elsewhere as well. So where do you start with ups?
Number one is Mac Jones to me. I watched the film, and I got to tell you, my biggest takeaway, if you want to feel good about the Patriots, and look, I'm not going to make him out like he's going to be Tom Brady or anything like that, but the most significant thing to me in this game was that the moment was not too big for Mac Jones. I thought he was, especially the first drive of the game, he was ready to go. Him and Kendrick Bourne were ready to go. I don't know about anybody else on this team, but they were ready. I mean, Mac Jones to pull out, he makes the third down throw what was that? Third and 14 to Hunter Henry. Bolden had the drop there, which was a killer. They would have been in the red zone. That same drive, 2nd and 10, the Jonnu Smith tip. Max scrambles on 3rd and 10. Yes, he threw the interception, but to me, I thought that was a really good throw. I think 9 out of 10 times that is a touchdown against anybody. At the worst, it's an incomplete pass. The guy gets a fingertip on it, breaks it up.
Yeah.
99 out of 100 times, there's no way anybody picks that off. That was an Ed Reed type play. I thought it should have been a touchdown. Against most teams, it's a touchdown. Micah Hyde made a better play. You got to tip your cap. The other interception was not a good decision on his part, but I had Mac Jones for 11 pluses in this game, 4 minus plays. So I thought he was really good in that, and plus it was really cold. So that answered the question for me. I still have questions about him in the wind because of his arm strength, but at least it was frigid, and he threw the ball well. I thought his first pass of the game to I think it was Kendrick Bourne on a comebacker, that was from the right hash, and he threw a lot of heat on that. So to me, all positive about Mac Jones out of this game.
Right. And when you figure with any young quarterback, arm strength can improve going forward, right, as time goes on. So how about your second up?
Kendrick Bourne. I thought, he showed that he's a game breaker, but a lot of people say, well, he should have gotten more playing time, more touches before this. You may be right. I think it was a longer process for him to get acclimated into this offense and feel capable. I mean, just remember, just a week ago, he ran a run route against Miami on a key 3rd down, and, they had to punt. So, we've seen that out of Kendrick since training camp, when he had a lot of issues in training camp with routes and converting routes and things like that you need to do in this offense. But, I thought this was really good. He's tough as nails. He makes plays. I feel really good about him and Mac going forward.
Did you find a way to find a third one?
Yeah, I mean, I would, I thought Hunter Henry was pretty good in this game. He had a bad route and he had a drop. But I will say my third up, Ted Karras, I also thought was good. But David Andrews, I had him for a completely clean sheet in this game. He wasn't dominating or anything like that. Didn't have any plus plays, but clean sheet as far as pressures and run stuffs in this game. And so that was good to see from one of their leaders.
So we'll now kind of transition now into what this final stretch for the Patriots. It's not just this year. It's now become kind of a thing here since they won the Super Bowl in 2018. I know everyone, Ted Johnson's been on airwaves in Boston, how they used those final 2 games as a tune-up, but no one can say they felt good about that Patriots team heading into that postseason when they had to host the Chargers, then go to Kansas City, and then play the Rams. That still didn't feel right at the end, of course. And then you could say as a fan in response to that, well, Brady and Bill, there was a rift there. Okay, but even so, the last 2 years now without Brady, it's still pretty evident that Bill Belichick's teams are not finishing the year strong. That has to be a concern. They're not playing their best football at the most important time of year, and dare I say, that's kind of what it looked like this past weekend. Teams trending up, playing their best football at the end of the year, did well this past weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll get to that in just a second. But let me tell you about LinkedIn Talent Solution. These days, it can be hard to find and hire the right candidates for your small business. I should know over at BSJ. That's why LinkedIn Jobs made it easier to find the people you want to talk to faster and for free. Create a free job post in minutes to LinkedIn Jobs to reach your network and beyond to the world's largest professional network of over 770 million people. Focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience and use screening questions to get your role in front of only the most qualified. Then use the simple tools on LinkedIn Jobs to quickly filter and prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates you want to talk to faster. Did you know every week nearly 40 million job seekers visit LinkedIn? Post your job for free at linkedin.com/Bedard, Bedard. That's linkedin.com/Bedard to post your jobs for free. Terms and conditions apply. So, yeah, I mean, your record is what your record is. And going back to, I mean,
Put it
even
this
this.
way, if you keep finishing your contracts like that, you ain't getting any jobs on LinkedIn, right? You got to finish strong. You got to finish out your terms well.
Exactly. I think that they win the Super Bowl. What was it, 20? So 20, even the year they beat the Rams, 2018. They lost 2 games in December that year after, there was the miracle in Miami. There was the Steelers game at Pittsburgh, and you're just like, holy cow, like what is going on with this team? Now, that team was able to, after that, say, all right, we're going to run the ball. We're going to, they were able to go on let's just call it a fortunate run. I mean, I think that they had some, Tom Brady in Kansas City doing what he did. That was historic.
Yes.
I think they benefited by going against Jared Goff in the Super Bowl, and Sean McVay was overwhelmed by Bill Belichick and got completely outcoached. Most seasons like that, you're not winning the Super Bowl. The Patriots did, credit to them. But that season, 2019, the downfall of the boogeymen, which looked a lot like what we saw down the stretch here. Another reason why I don't think you can look at it and say, oh, it was just Josh Allen, where I'm just going to chalk it up to that. Last season they limped to the finish line with a poor December. Never really put up a fight in the last 2 months. And then this year, to me, Brendan, I think it's something that Bill Belichick has to look strongly at and say, he has to ask those questions. Why is this happening to us? To me, I think that it speaks to how he's deferred to an older roster, especially on defense every year. I mean, I've been calling for years, like, just play the kids, like, just let's at least see them. And, because young legs last longer. Sorry, I just got excited, almost knocked my microphone off. Very excited. But, play the kids and you keep deferring to Dante Hightower and bringing, Jamie Collins back, and Kyle Van Noy and Lawrence Guy plays a million snaps, and Davon Godchaux doesn't give you anything. You bring back Dietrich Wise, and Devin McCourty's out there, and Juwan Bentley isn't fast, and all this stuff. They're not mixing in the kids enough to where, sometimes you just need a boost from young legs. Right. And I think that's what you've seen at the end of these seasons where, they're just challenged from that standpoint. And now it becomes even more important with only one bye week given out to the top finisher in each conference. Now you're going to have to be playing consecutive weeks even longer, really, in reality, to make Super Bowls. And so I think he needs to seriously look at that and say, what's the issue? Because it's not a one-off. It's something that's happened year after year.
Yeah, from a leadership standpoint, but it begs the question, Greg, that he's 70 years old. He's trying to maximize his window, and perhaps he's just got this thing where he can't see a younger player take the field that doesn't have enough experience or doesn't think he's ready to go. So doesn't that make you ask the question too? Never mind the actual older personnel, but are the younger coaches on his staff getting younger players ready to go at a fast enough rate for them to see the field? It just overall feels kind of stubborn, right?
Well, I think it's a great point by you, Brendan, because I think that, when I look at, we knew this defense was not all that talented at the end of the year after, especially without Mills out there. But I've seen more talented Patriots or less talented Patriots defenses do a better job. For example, 2011. I'll always use that example. I thought it was a masterful coaching job by Bill Belichick and that staff that included Pepper Johnson and Patrick Graham, who was the defense coordinator for the Giants this year, Matt Patricia, who's been a head coach and a defensive coordinator, Josh Boyer, who's been a defensive coordinator with the Dolphins, with Brian Flores. And Brian Flores was a defensive assistant on that staff. And I'm sorry, the Sterling Moores and Antoine Moldens and, Mark Anderson. I mean, Sean Ellis, who was terrible that year. Well, I thought it was going to be a great Patriot. But anyways, guys who were just Andre Carter, like these guys who they just brought off the trash heap, who really didn't have that much left. For them they executed. They played great down the stretch. They didn't have much talent, but they knew how to do their job, and they executed against everybody. And you compare that team and what they did to this team, and you can't help but look at the coaching and just be like, what's going on there? And to tell you the truth, talking to people around the team after the season, everybody wants to know what happened after the bye week. From what I understand, I don't know specifically what happened, but I could tell you Bill Belichick needs to do a deep dive if he wants to, because 2 of his sons are on that staff, and maybe he doesn't want to face reality. Somebody needs to make him face reality that there's a leadership problem on that defense in terms of the coaching staff and how it filters down to the players. I think if I had to guess, putting the puzzle pieces together, we saw the first 6 games of the season, the defense was a mess. 3rd and 25 against the Cowboys. After that, the defense, great execution. Bill took over the defense, in my opinion.
Yes.
There was an alpha male on the defensive side. This is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to do it. This is your job. This is what you're going to do. And that's what all the players bought into. I don't know this, but I think after the bye week or during the bye week, Bill gave control back to Steve Belichick and Gerard Mayo and said, all right, these guys are primed and ready to go. Take it home. And I think at that point in time, I think some of the players started to have doubts about their role, about what are we doing on defense? Is the game plan the right way? Questioning play calls, like we heard Devin McCourty questioning play calls in the first 6 games of the season. Yep. We didn't hear that outwardly at the podium, but I think that was going on behind the scenes. And I think there was certainly a disconnect on defense between the coaches and the players and their execution, and that was reflected on the field. So one of the things Bill has to take a strong look at this offseason, if he wants to be honest with himself, is what's going on in the defense. Who's gonna be in charge of the defense next year? Who's gonna be the alpha male voice that's gonna get crap done? And if Gerard leaves, is it gonna be Steve? Is that a path for success? Do you reinstall Matt Patricia, who was last seen on this staff making Nick Foles look like Josh Allen in Super Bowl 52? Those are hard questions that need to be asked. But in my opinion, there's no question, talking to people around the team, there was a huge disconnect between the players and the coaches on defense down the stretch. And that was the reason for the fall for them.
And if Bill does have that conversation with himself, let's compare it to the quarterback that went out the door. Tom Brady going to Tampa almost acknowledged, I can't do this all by myself. Bill has to have that moment for himself as well as a coach. At 70 years old, is anyone going to shame him if he decides to bring, say, a Joe Judge back to run special teams? I know Joe Judge at the podium's a pain, but if Bill acknowledges, I need help to finish this thing strong, would anyone blame him for that? No. Just like no one blames Tom Brady for going to Tampa and bringing in Leonard Fournette and bring Gronk back and bring in, it's kind of the same thing. Like, it's almost Brady admitting, like, I can't do this all alone at this stage of my career. An elite defense. They accumulated great young draft picks in that front 7 in Tampa. If Bill were to bring back some older people to help run a show, Dante Scarnecchia for years. Remember, Bill would bring him back and say, Dante, please. Like, kind of similar situation here for Bill. He has to come around on that, but I do understand. I think he's found himself, Greg. I think he's trying to find a fine line of developing his staff while also trying to still be in charge of everything. And he's having trouble trying to find that balance, right? Especially if you're saying, if your intel is correct, which I think you've done a great job historically getting pretty good information. That's kind of a bad sign if you're just going back and forth, like, okay, you run the defense. All right, now I'll do it. No, you do it. It's just, that's got to be sorted out in the offseason. Have a clear plan. And I think it's a domino effect to the players. So, yeah, I think there's got to be some sort of like clear cut plan. Like real quick, he's got that with Josh McDaniels, right? Josh runs the offense, doesn't have to touch it.
Maybe it's Matt Patricia. I mean, look, I'm not crazy about that. I don't think a lot of people in the building would be crazy about that. I don't think he's the most popular guy there. And if you remember in the Seth Wickersham book, people basically blame that Super Bowl on Matt Patricia in Seth Wickersham's book. And I think that's my understanding too. And so, but at least he has experience, and he might have learned a lot of things from Detroit. And you come back, everybody makes mistakes. Nobody's perfect. I'm sure Josh McDaniels made a ton of mistakes in Denver, and he's acknowledged that. So who knows? I mean, in a perfect world, Matt Patricia comes back. He's a better coach. He's the alpha on defense, and they get their crap together.
Yep. And maybe,
but of course, there's a lot of personnel issues that need to be figured out, namely, and we'll deal with that in the offseason, but they need more man cover guys, and they need a better defensive line, and they need speed at linebacker. So,
exactly right. And it maybe like take Patricia out of being something that he's not, which is maybe he's not Ernie Adams. Maybe he can still be a defensive coordinator. Real quick, before we get to our BostonSportsJournal.com member question of the day, some specific players you want to hit on that might be back, that might be out. Trent Brown is a name that comes to mind. Isaiah Wynn, Jonnu Smith, Davon Godchaux. Just want to add some quick thoughts there before we get to the question.
Yeah, from what I've heard, a lot of disappointment in the building about Trent Brown and the way he finished this season. And remember, he was hurt for a good portion of the beginning of the season, and he came back and he played well in a couple of games. They were not happy with the way he finished the season, and at this point, I would be surprised if he's back. I think they were excited about that at one point. I don't think that's happening. I do think that I think that they have, whether it's Onwenu, who, didn't do the job at tackle when he got, or at guard, maybe he's the guy at tackle. Isaiah Wynn, I think they're going to look hard at. They have the 5th-year option, but if you trade him, somebody else takes it, take, pennies on the dollar for him just to get rid of him. I don't think there's a lot of confidence in him. I think Justin Herron did a nice job in the last 2 games. I mean, it wasn't perfect, but, and Yadni Kajust was a guy who showed a lot of promise this year. Yasir Durant was a guy who they went and traded for. So I think they have good options. Shaq Mason, I think that's going to be a long conversation in the offseason. He did not finish the season well. Not that I didn't think it was lack of effort, but I think he's challenged. I think that Jonnu Smith, they're going to have to examine whether there's any hope of him having an offseason to take it off and coming back and being better. At this point, I would say no, but I don't know. Davon Godchaux, he would be a guy I would definitely move on from. They tried to make him the nose tackle to solve all their issues in there. It did not happen. He was bad the whole season, just about, other than the one Bills game on the road where he was great. But that was a one-off. So a lot of questions that we'll be dealing with, over at BSJ. Yeah. The season does not stop. I will start my season wrap up looking at the whole season, grading the different units, grading the players, looking at the off season, how the depth chart comes out, cap wise, who should go, who should not, what I'm hearing from people in the off season. So trust me, football season never, ever stops at BSJ.
And as it pertains to specific questions about specific players or even coaching hires, Greg will take your questions on the member question of the day. Maybe your question will get picked. And let's get to today's BostonSportsJournal.com member question of the day. Check us out over at BSJ. $39.99, our annual plan. Not only do you get top-notch analysis of all the Boston sports teams, but if you're a Patriots junkie, and you're listening to this podcast like you are right now, a membership at BSJ gives you access to a ton of video analysis that Bedard does on the coach's film, direct access to him in weekly chat. So, Greg, this question coming from Randall Rick 1. What's the depth chart beyond Dave Ziegler in that Black Ops Patriots front office?
Yeah, it's a good question because Ziegler's really only been in the role for 1 year. I understand that he is a serious candidate with Vegas, which could also mean that some of the Patriots assistants get involved, whether it's, Mayo or McDaniels or, what have you. Who knows, maybe even Brian Flores. I don't know, but he is a serious candidate there. So you have to look at that. I mean, I think Brian Smith, who was the personnel coordinator, would sort of be the next guy up. I do think Elliott Wolf is the X factor. He is still considered, I think, a scouting consultant because he's getting paid from the Browns, I think, still. But Elliott Wolf has had interviews around the league. I think in Chicago he interviewed. He's well thought of. I know his dad, Ron Wolf, was around a lot during training camp. He's a guy that I've covered, back with the Packers. I think he's really good. But I think that those would be the 2 highest names to me. If Ziegler. There's also Quinn, who was in Detroit with Matt Patricia, who was the GM
Quinn,
there. But yeah, Bob Quinn. He's a free agent, and so he could be brought back. You never know, and maybe there's a Patricia tie in there.
Sure. And that goes back to what we just discussed about maybe Bill bringing back some old pals to, we get on him for that sometimes, but just some older folks that can help take some of the load off him, right? He's getting older. That's okay. Greg, we'll talk. Yeah. We will talk again on Thursday. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to the Greg Bedard Patriots Podcast. Brendan Glasheen filling in for Nick Cattles. He's Greg Bedard, of course, brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. We'll talk to you again on Thursday.